Valak's Lair, a journey into the Accursed chapel. It was a moonless night when Michael, a historian obsessed with the occult, decided to visit the Accursed chapel deep in the woods. The ruins, shrouded in legends of Valak, a demonic entity, were said to lure the curious and trap them forever. Michael dismissed the warnings as folklore, his rational mind seeking truth, not superstition. Armed with a flashlight, a journal, and an old map, Michael trekked through the dense forest. The air grew colder as he neared the chapel. The towering trees seemed to bend inward, forming a dark tunnel that guided him toward his destination. He paused when he reached a clearing, his breath catching at the sight of the chapel. It stood broken but defiant, its Gothic spires pointing skyward like skeletal fingers. Vines crawled over the stone walls, their thorny tendrils gripping the ruins as if trying to pull them into the earth. A faint, unnatural glow emanated from the shattered stained glass windows. Michael hesitated at the threshold. The air inside was heavy, oppressive, as though the chapel itself breathed in despair. He stepped inside, his footsteps echoing eerily. The walls were lined with faded murals depicting scenes of divine battles, though now the faces of angels appeared twisted, almost mocking. The altar at the center of the chapel drew his attention. It was pristine, untouched by time, and adorned with a blackened crucifix. Symbols Michael didn't recognize were etched into the surface, their jagged forms pulsating faintly. As he reached out to examine the altar, the temperature plummeted. His flashlight flickered before extinguishing completely, plunging the chapel into darkness. "Who dares disturb my sanctuary?" a voice hissed, low and venomous, yet echoing as if coming from everywhere at once. Michael spun around, his flashlight sputtering back to life. Standing at the far end of the chapel was a figure cloaked in shadows. Its face was deathly pale, framed by a black habit. Two eyes, dark as voids, stared unblinkingly at him. "Valak," Michael whispered, his voice shaking. The figure glided closer, its movements impossibly smooth. Whispers filled the air, overlapping and growing louder, forming a chorus of torment. Michael's legs felt rooted to the ground as Valak raised a hand, bony fingers pointing at him. "You seek knowledge?" Valak said, its voice laced with malice. "Then witness the truth." The chapel began to twist around him. The walls oozed a black, tar-like substance, and the murals bled crimson. Screams echoed from unseen places, each more anguished than the last. Michael clutched his head, the sound unbearable. A vision overtook him. He saw villagers centuries ago, dragged into the chapel by unseen forces. They screamed prayers as they were consumed by darkness. He understood then, the chapel was a trap, feeding Valak with the souls of the curious and the foolish. The vision ended abruptly. Michael was back in the chapel, but Valak now stood inches away. Its face twisted into a horrific grin. "You are mine now," it whispered. Summoning every ounce of courage, Michael grabbed the crucifix from the altar. It burned in his hands, but he held on, thrusting it toward Valak. The demon shrieked, its form dissolving into smoke. The chapel began to collapse. Michael ran, the walls crumbling behind him. He barely made it out before the entire structure caved in, leaving nothing but a smoking crater. Michael escaped, but he was forever haunted. In his dreams, he still heard the whispers of Valak, reminding him that once marked, there is no escape from the lair of the Accursed.